theatrical year of 2023 was interesting, enlightening, puzzling, and sometimes shocking to see how each performance came and went with its performance. One of those factors was the return of original Pixar stories to the big screen after the pandemic laid waste to their original release strategy for the past 3 years. With Elemental being the first original film out of the studio since Onward and the follow-up to 2022's Lightyear. What came out of the theatrical run was something I don't get to see that often, a sleeper of a film. Despite not showing much in the beginning, its longevity and its existence was shocking to say the least, with it becoming the highest grossing film from Pixar since 2019's Toy Story 4. Asking point, was this film right to earn that title based on its own quality, or was it worth waiting until streaming and available on physical media? This is after the theater for Disney and Pixar's Elemental. Elemental marks the 27th film in Pixar's nearly 30-year history since the release of the original Toy Story. In the public eye, this marks the return of Pixar in its style of making new stories for the big screen, not including 2022 Lightyear, as that was part of the Toy Story franchise. Pixar has not had an original film screen in its entirety since 2017's Coco, as 2018 and 2019 were homes to Incredibles 2 and Toy Story 4, with 2020 onwards only having a reduced run because of the effects of the COVID-19 pandemic. Since the start and the eventual end of the pandemic period, the next 3 films out of the studio, all original work, were sent straight over to Disney+, which was understandable until 2022's Turning Red. Despite there being a return in attendance, especially after Spider-Man No Way Home a few months before, Pixar opted to send the film straight to streaming and let Buzz Lightyear be the one to bring Pixar back to the big screen, which did not do so well whatsoever. For whatever reason you can think of, it did not bring people to theaters. In the midst of these decisions affecting in one aspect, hurting the Pixar brand and company, the team behind the next film after Lightyear was hard at work to deliver a film that was worthy of the studio's name. And leading that team was director Peter Saul in his second time helming a Pixar film since 2015's The Good Dinosaur, which sadly came out the same year as Insider, and just how the film was received and performed, it just fell into the black sheep group of Pixar's film history. However, in defense of the director, he was involved since the very beginning with that film. It's just the film changed so many times with its vision and its direction that just in general with the film being made at all is impressive to say the least. Here with Elemental, this was his project from the get-go, and he knew what he wanted this film to be since its conception in 2016 all the way to its final release in 2023. Basing it off his personal experiences growing up, the real-world environment inspired by the idea of moving away to start a better life, and having the element being a movable analogy for emotions in certain situations. All these ideas and more were ingrained into the DNA of the film, which is what we saw when Elemental finally arrived in theaters in the summer of 2023. As the film opens on the vast yet soon-to-be open full ocean of Elemental City, the city that unites the 4 types of elementals: fire, water, earth, and air. No relation to Avatar: The Last Airbender. We see 2 fire elements, Birdie and Cinder, arriving in the city in search to find a new home for themselves to give their soon-to-be-born daughter Ember a brand new life. The opening scene paints the picture for this world and the social norms for this universe, in which the fire elements are not commonly accepted by the majority as they don't mix well together literally, as fire elements cannot be in contact with water elements and they could harm earth elements. But despite that, Birdie and Cinder do all they can to give their daughter the best possible life in a small part of Elemental City called Firetown, where slowly but surely they become staples in their community as Bernie slowly prepares his daughter as she grows up to take over their business. By the time she is of present age, while she learned the fundamentals of running the store, she still hasn't gotten full control over her emotions. However, despite her awareness and her attempts at trying to learn how to keep them in check, her want to hurry up to allow her father, who is getting of age to retire soon, is the more higher priority for her at the moment. When she gets the opportunity to prove herself ready to take over, she makes a crucial mistake which sets her and her family's legacy on a collision course with disaster and also a water element by the name of Wade, in which their 2 very different elemental backgrounds would prove to pave the way of a bond that would involve growth and love at the same time. The story itself being a play on a traditional love story, it's not an immediate attraction, but one that takes time as both of them slowly as they get to know more about each other and their desires and personality traits. Quite frankly, it was heartwarming to see their moments go from one side hating with the other fearing to eventually the 2 becoming comfortable with each other to be themselves. It speaks true for any developing relationship, regardless of where it might head in the end. Seeing these 2 become comfortable with each other was beautiful in its own way. Despite it focusing on both Ember and Wade, Ember received the higher half of the character development, plus had a much more deeper involvement in the story development via her parents. Of the 4 elements we see in the film, fire is the most expanded one with the most development, more defined traits and characteristics as well as backstory. It helps root Ember deeper in her story and in the film see her eyes on what exactly drives her character. All she ever wanted to do is to help out her father and carry out his legacy, to honor all the sacrifices he and also her mother had to make to give her a better life. As the son of two immigrant parents who came to America for that exact same reason, I can relate to her incredibly so. The balance of trying to do what is right, but at the same time being as she is a young adult, also trying to find her place in this world, it can be hard. You can punish yourself at times for feeling like you're not living up to what you set out to do. It can go for any child of any parent out there. It's a feeling that everyone experiences at some point. Leia Lewis does an incredible job voicing the character, finding the emotions to carry out in scene where Ember is doing her best to help out her father, as well as the slow opening up to Wade as the film progresses. She delivers that performance well, and it makes you feel truly behind what Ember's character is going through in each scene. As for Wade, the character himself represents the aspect of opposites attract. Literally. His character is more of the expected emotions of water, being more sensitive, going with the flow, being more in touch with himself. His life is the polar opposite of Ember's, having more of the ability to be whatever he wants to be, to try and to fail whatever his life may take him next. When Wade and Ember first meet and have those initial attractions, it's clear that these two are further apart than you might think, having two different sets of ideologies and ways of thinking. Wade is more open-minded while Ember is more closed and hesitant at first. His personality and motives are key to helping out Ember with her own struggles to evolve herself. The reverse isn't as impactful other than himself willing to take more risks and falling in love in such an unexpected place. Mamadou Ati totally sells the role and makes the character much more believable and someone you want to be friends with, personally speaking. I can't go further without talking about Elemental City itself, a clear analogy of New York City, which I happen to live in. It is a character in different shades and however you look at it, one that has so much to offer, and the more you look, the more you see. Pixar is at the top of their animation game with how detailed and rich their worlds are nowadays. From humans to even this. Each and everything has so many moving pieces to it. You're just left in awe to how much love and care goes into every single frame. It also paints the social conflicts present in the movie, to how tight and workable the water, air, and earth elements are able to thrive in this environment, but not so much for the fire elements. It also exists as a reminder for Ember to experience that makes her wanting to stay in the world she knows, rather than try to navigate the difficult, unknown, and sometimes unaccepting ones. When it comes to the actual meat of the story after the setup with our characters in this world, it plays like a traditional Pixar story, where there is an overarching problem, but the characters do temporary solutions to keep on going and pushing back the actual solution to the end. There is no real villain or bad guy in this film, just the pressure of a high amount of water hitting a specific section of the city that happens to be made mostly of fire elements. Seriously, the city's leadership are messed up if more resources were not allocated towards that problem. Nevertheless, it serves as a reminder to Ember a way of why they can't be together, because it physically wouldn't match with each other. However, for each and every temporary solution they create causes them to spend more time together and gets them to become closer to each other. While there have been so many romance films and TV shows throughout the last century, it still strikes a chord to see these two not just learning to accept each other, as well as not to just fall in love, but also discovering new things about themselves. Whether it's Wade being more assured of his actions or Ember learning more people skills and seeing the larger world for what it is. Speaking of the larger world, I stated the fire elements received the most lore and backstory setup. It is very, very true to an unbalanced scale to an extent. We got to see an entire other landscape of the fire elements, how was the reaction towards them, and got a very tight-knit community present throughout the film. But in terms of percentage, they got 50% of the actual world building. Water got maybe a good 25%, and earth and air kind of just being there. We had some notable characters such as Gale and Cloud, but other than that, the primary focus was either on Ember and her family, or Wade and some points on his family. In any other film, I wouldn't have much of an issue with this, but considering how rich this world is, I just wanted to see more. It's a 90-minute film, sure, it's just they did such a good job of making a world that I want and would want to see more of. As for the other characters, I loved Ember's parents. Bernie represents so many great fathers out there, including my own, ones who put themselves through so much to provide their family with a better life. His own personal sacrifices are felt throughout the entire movie, all to give Ember the foundations to have an even better life, regardless if he was or wasn't aware of asking Ember on what she truly wanted. Cinder is just hilarious. She's not the typical motherly figure. She's still a mom, but just focusing more on the romantic side she hopes her daughter could find someday. The first half of the film from her was a bit tame, and it seemed like she was just going to serve as a minor or background character. But by the second half, she just had so many great moments to see. Both parents were traditional at first, wanting Ember to have it simple, to own the business and marry another fire element. While they weren't accepting of Wade mainly due to just their hesitation with water elements, by the end they were open for their daughter's happiness to accept him as their partner. Then there was Wade's mother, Brooke, who is one of the kindest people in the movie. She's just so open and accepting to everyone. She has mother goals, as well as mother-in-law goals. While her role is more minor compared to Ember's parents, she does provide Ember the drive for her development for the rest of the film by that point. I will say the ending is a bit, we've seen this before in other movies. I will give them credit for making a callback to an earlier point in the film to resolve the overall final problem for them to face. And seeing their kiss at the end was all worth it. It felt organic. It felt like the end of this journey that got us to this point. as well as to finally give Ember the last push she needs to not just be the element she has to be, but also wants to be on her own accord. Again, this film does a great job of putting in moments that you don't expect to come back and hit just right until it does. And that's one of the film's strengths as a whole. Plus, just seeing the simple drawings at the end just to tell the epilogue of the film was always appreciated in these Pixar films. Elemental came out during a busy summer period last year. It may not have had the biggest opening, but it did held on for a long time, becoming their highest grossing film in 4 years. And after watching the film from the comforts of my own home, I can safely say that this film was worthy of being the one to earn that title. However, it's not one of Pixar's best films. It's not even in the top 10 of the 27, but it is a film that is really, really good in its own right. It may not win Best Animated Film at the Oscar, however, since arriving home on Disney Plus or on home media, it did win over a lot of people who did skip out on the film when it was in theaters, making a film worth watching after its theatrical run ends. I would love to see more from this world again, whether in smaller expansion or even a full-blown sequel. It just has that rich world material to just keep building on. But with all that said, I'm giving Elemental my score 4 out of 5 and my personal score of a large popcorn, soda, and candy. What did you think of Pixar's latest film? I would love to chat with you about it. Until next time, this has been Joe from ActionX. Stay safe out there, be good to each other, and as always, peace out.